Multiply with variables. Example 1. Multiply and reduce this fraction to simplify the equation. So here we have two fractions, and we're going to treat it just like we've done before, where we multiply the top together and we're going to multiply the bottom together. So we then get on the top 20 and px. And then on the bottom we will get 10x squared. Because as they are all next to each other, the n, the p, and the x stay on the top, that means that we're multiplying all those things together. So now let's go ahead and use prime factorization to break this down so we can reduce it. So we have 20. So let's break that down into 2 and 10, and that can be broken down into 2 and 5. And so then we have 2 times 2 times 5 times n times p times x on the top. And then on the bottom we have 2 times 5. And then we have x and another x, as we have 2x squared as indicated by this exponent. Now, like before, we're going to divide. So we can divide this 2 and this 2, and then this 5 and this 5, and this 1x and this 1x. So let's go ahead and divide this out. So we have this and that 2, and then each become 1. This and this, so now that becomes 1. Now this and this, and each become 1. So now we can go ahead and multiply. Now we can multiply out again, as we have no more common factors or variables between the two on the top and the bottom, so we can say it's reduced form now. So we have 1 times 2 times 1, which is 2. N times p is np. Then we have 1 times 1 times 1 times x. So we just have 1x, or just you can put x. And this would be our reduced fraction. So let's do another example. Here we have another multiplication with two fractions. So this time what we're going to do is we're going to break it out before we multiply across. So we have 4x squared. That can become 2 times 2 times x. Now this 3, it's this prime number, so we'll just leave it as is, which is 9y can then be multiplied out as 3 times y. Then we have 2 times 2 times 2 times x for the bottom. Let's go ahead and find our common factors that we can divide out before we begin to multiply. So we have a 3 and a 3. Then we have a 1, 2, and a 2 here. And then a 2 here, and a 2 here. And then we have an x here and an x here. We can divide all of those out. So each become 1. This 2 and this 2. Then this x and this x. And this 3 and this 3. So now we have 1 times 1 times 1 times x times 3 times y. So that becomes 3xy on the top. And then we just have 1 times 1 times 1 times 2. So that's 2. And then just times 1. So then we just have 2 on the bottom. And this would be our reduced fraction. Let's do another example. Multiply and reduce this fraction. So what we're going to do is then we're going to multiply these out first, like the first time we did it on example 1 today. So now we have 5 times 9, which is 45. Then we have a to the 6, and then x to the 2nd. Then we have 4a times 12x. So that's 4 times 12 is 48 times ax. And then what we need to do is then break these into its prime factorization so we can then divide out common factors. So 45 can become 5 and 9 5 is a prime number. 9 could be broken down into 3 and 3. So we get on the top 3 times 3 times 5 times A times A times A times A, as we have 6, and then we have 2 x's. Then over 48. 48 can be divided by 2, which then we get 24 here. 2 and 12 then. As 24 can be divided by 2. 12 can go into 3 and 4. Then this 4 can go to 2 and 2. So then we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. And then we have times A times X. So now let's go ahead and cross out the ones we have in common. So we have an A here and an A here. We'll cancel those out. And an X here and an X here. We'll cancel those out. Then we have 1 3 here and a 3 here. And then no other numbers share a common factor on this, so we would just cross all these out. And now let's go ahead and rewrite it. So now we have on the top 3 times 5, so that's 15. Then we just have 1 2 3 4 5 5 8. So we just write A to the 5th, and then we have 1x over 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, so that's 16. And then we would have nothing left, as all of this is just ones. So this would be our final reduced fraction.